Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, displaced people living in the Zamzam camp in Sudan's North Darfur line the road and cheer as the first convoy of food and supplies makes it through in months. But as the civil war continues around them, devastating civilian lives, this glimmer of hope is still vastly short of what is needed. Also, Namibia heads into general elections with the legacy independence movement that became the ruling party SWAPO facing stiffer than ever competition as popular frustration over disparities bed in. And as world powers meet in South Korea to take a fifth fraught swing at negotiating a plastic pollution treaty of global existential importance, we head to the Gambia, where plans to drastically reduce the waste sparks concerns over economic fallout for the poorest. Well, for the first time in months, food trucks have made it through to the Zamzam displacement camp in Sudan's northern Darfur. The UN says that the convoy arrived towards the end of last week, offering a desperately needed supply to the thousands living there amidst the world's biggest humanitarian crisis. But the threat of a lifeline is but a slim one. Laura Berstecker tells us more.
Racing through a deserted landscape, dozens of white trucks head towards refugee camps in northern Darfur. It's the first time in months that food aid is able to reach this remote Sudanese region, where millions of people displaced by conflict are battling famine on a daily basis.
People in the camp are resorting to extreme measures to survive because food is so scarce. Families are eating crushed peanut shells. Across the camp, there are also parents who are mourning the deaths of their children who passed away from malnutrition.
In total, 700 UN trucks carrying 17,000 tons of aid were dispatched across Sudan. They'll be able to provide food to 1.5 million people for the next month. A crucial delivery, but far from enough to cover the needs of a country where over half of the population is facing acute hunger. On Monday, Sudanese Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan authorized the UN to establish 3 new supply hubs in at-risk regions. The move was welcomed by the organization, which has for months been calling on the warring parties to help facilitate the distribution of aid.
We must do better. We must make sure that these words, "you are not alone," are not just words that people say into a microphone when they visit you, but they become the core of our work.
Devastated by a bloody and protracted civil war, Sudan is currently facing the worst humanitarian crisis in the world, according to the United Nations.
Well, Namibia is on the eve of some high-stakes elections. The ruling SWAPO party is tied to the country's history. It was born of the independence movement that led to Namibia breaking away from South African rule in 1990. Now, SWAPO has come out on top in the democratic elections that have since followed. But this year, it's facing tougher competition than ever after a tough run even back in 2019. Political leaders on all sides are calling for a hefty turnout from all voters.
I know my voice counts, and I want to appeal to the youth. Go vote. Go in your numbers. You are the future of this country.
If you vote, the president or maybe that party where you vote, they can change the things. It's not in the day. Rome is not built in a day.
I want improvement. Change is not so much. I can change, but if there is no improvement, it does not bring it. We want improvement. We want to see people that are serious, that are committed to the cause of all Namibians.
Now, in many ways, Namibia is doing really well. It's mineral-rich, a higher middle-income country. But as with so many nations, inequalities are starkly apparent, and that leads to frustration. SWAPO is, though, offering change. It's fielding Vice President Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah, who, if successful, would be the country's first female leader. But SWAPO is facing the rise of the rival Independent Patriots for Change Party, or IPC. For a look at all of this landscape, Crystal Alderson, Southern African analyst, joins me now with more. Crystal, thanks so much for making the time to speak to me. Now, first of all, what for you are the key issues at stake and at play this time around for Namibian elections?
Good evening, Georgina. I think it's a pivotal election for this nation of only 2 million people. We've got about 1 million registered voters. And I think, as your insert had mentioned, unemployment and corruption have been the big issue. So in 7 hours' time, Namibians will go out to vote. But I do think we are going to see some level of change. I do think that SWAPO has been in power since 1990. There's also been, like a ruling party, have taken for granted some of the pivotal issues that needed to be addressed. And I do think that the opposition will make some inroads. And we already saw that in that 2019 election, SWAPO had in fact lost its majority in that vote. So we do see 15 candidates, only 5 expected to really draw some serious level of support. And Triple N, as they call her, the 72-year-old SWAPO candidate, if elected, will become the first female president, not only in Namibia, but also in Southern Africa.
Mm-hmm. So we won't know what the outcome is until Thursday. So that vote's on Wednesday. We're expecting results out a day later. But whatever happens, do you see a common thread through the pressure that SWAPO has faced throughout the run-up to this election and some other of those sea changes that have seen established parties upended elsewhere in the region this year? I'm talking about, South Africa's ANC and Botswana's BDP.
Yes, I think this year has been quite a sea change for Southern African nations. This is the last part of Africa where liberation movements have still been in charge. Namibia, South Africa, Mozambique. And we've seen South Africa started, of course, in May, where Africa's oldest liberation party was voted essentially out of power. And their majority, in fact, they lost it and they had to form a government of national unity. We saw a couple of weeks ago the same with Botswana, the BNP being voted out of power after 60 years, Georgina. Again, Mozambique at the moment in a political flux. And so therefore, one cannot underestimate that SWAPO may not be the party in charge in the next few days. I think in Botswana, we were all saying, well, the opposition are strong enough. But in fact, people came out and we saw the ruling party only get 4 seats after ruling a country for more than 60 years, Georgina. So I do think that one has to look at what's going to happen in Namibia. The fact that there's high youth unemployment, young voters don't feel this attachment to liberation movements anymore. They want change. They want to be part of the global world. And when corruption and when you're part of the ruling party and you're able to get the elite kind of the redistribution, and that redistribution is not filtering to the masses, I do think the vote is the one opportunity where you can bring about change in that country. And so I do think the next few hours, 24 hours in Namibia, absolutely pivotal to show which direction the country will be moving in.
Thank you so much, Crystal Alderson, there giving us a bit of an insight on the stakes ahead of Namibia's general election, which will be kicking off on Wednesday. Well, now we're heading to Kenya, where a crackdown on health and safety has seen the Ministry of Education order the closure of 348 boarding schools. Now, the precautions come after 21 people died in a dorm fire back in September at the Hillside Endarasha Academy in Nyeri. Our correspondent Olivia Bizu talks us through.
Untreated water, overcrowded dormitories, faulty fire safety equipment. These are just some of the many, many issues that have come to light in 348 boarding schools across Kenya after an inspection by the Ministry of Education. Now, Kenyan President William Ruto ordered that inspection after a tragic fire took place in a boarding school in September, which killed 21 students. Now, that fire is the latest of a series of incidents which highlight safety issues in Kenyan boarding schools. In response, a petition was filed with the National Assembly calling for stricter laws to be put in place to ensure student safety. Earlier today, I spoke to one of the 2 men behind that petition, and I asked him whether the closure of the more than 300 boarding schools across the country was enough.
It's not sufficient. We still need to see how 340 these institutions, what criteria was used, how are they intending to ensure there is continuation of studies. If you close those institutions, where will the students go? Then again, we need to see a task force, a fully fledged task force committed to ensure that there is safety, not just in the and for these two institutions, all the institutions in the country that are housing these students.
Education Cabinet Secretary Julius Agamba has said that resources will be allocated to day schools to accommodate for the affected students. However, for many, the fire in September was a wake-up call, and they believe that the government has done too little, too late. As part of the investigation, almost 3,000 schools have been assessed. However, across the country, there are around 50,000 schools, so that means that many institutions remain unchecked.
Our Olivia Bizo there for us in Nairobi. Now, off the back of the COP29 climate talks in Azerbaijan, world powers have been meeting in South Korea this week to thrash out a roadmap for tackling the risks posed by plastic pollution. It's the fifth time nations have convened like this to craft a legally binding agreement for the issue. Now, it's been described as an existential one, but attempts to move forward have also highlighted stark divisions. The Gambia recently launched plans to reduce plastic waste by 86% over the next decade, but some do worry that the plan could hit the poorest hardest. Caitlin Kelly breaks it down for us from the Gambia.
Here in the Gambia, plastic pollution is a fact of life. NGO estimates from 2021 suggest there were 23,000 tonnes of plastic waste in the country. For a country that relies on its coastal economy, be it for tourism but also fishing, this is an urgent issue. Just 2 months ago, the Gambia introduced a national action plan, a policy framework that aims to reduce plastic pollution by 86% over the next decade. The plans include enhancing existing bans on single-use plastic bags, improving potable water access, and also a phased ban on plastic water bottles.
So the Gambia government plus the citizens of the Gambia have a responsibility to make sure they minimize the production of plastic waste. When you look at our fishing, the plastic has contributed immensely in declining the amount of species in our marine.
Many I've spoken to here are sceptical as to how realistic this plan is, given the reliance on the substance in daily life, but also the thousands who work as informal collectors.
Most of the bottles that we can sell to the market is from here. If at all there is no plastic in the Gambia, we will lose money, and then the economic too will go down small.
For us who are on the ground, working with scavengers every day, I am seeing it as a very lucrative venture for scavengers. People are engaging or scavenging it, taking it to the plastics companies. They have started making bucket. They have started making different things out of it. So I'm not seeing that it will be banned within 10 years.
As global plastic negotiations start in South Korea, countries like the Gambia, small coastal states, are hoping for more financing, but also for a just transition for the thousands of collectors and workers who are involved in the plastic economy.
Tough balancing act there for the Gambia, reflecting some of the hurdles faced by the entire continent. That, though, is all we have time for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks for joining us, though, and do so again if you can. Till then, take care.